I will say this, the Fever looked like they had at least a pretty good, calm locker room situation going on. They took a flamethrower to that. Guys, we are 2 weeks removed from this video of Raven Johnson gaslighting everybody.
2 weeks. That's how long it took for the Indiana Fever to draft the one player who spent her final college interview tour publicly accusing Caitlin Clark's fanbase of racist harassment. Raven Johnson, the South Carolina guard who claimed Iowa fans called her a monkey after their 2023 tournament matchup, is now a member of the Indiana Fever, the team built around the very player whose supporters she accused. This isn't just a questionable basketball decision. This is organizational malpractice at a level that defies basic common sense, and the Fever fanbase is in open revolt.
Yes.
And then another adversity would probably be Caitlin Clark.
Look at how far Caitlin Clark is playing off of Raven Johnson. Caitlin Clark, left side, she doesn't even look at her, waves her hand as if to say, I don't care about you, I'm not defending you.
That's one reason I hate the internet now. Because of that situation, like I got bashed, I got bullied, I got called all these things that I wasn't, aka like a monkey or this, I don't know, like it was just things like that. And I just think, I wanted to quit basketball at that time. And I wanted to just go in this little bubble of isolation and just be by myself. And I think, you know, I leaned on God. I had some wonderful teammates, wonderful people in my life, like I said, and they helped me find that light, and it put so much fuel to the fire to me to go back the next year.
Let's establish the timeline here, because context matters. In early April 2025, just weeks before the WNBA draft, Raven Johnson sat down for an interview reflecting on her college career. She brought up the 2023 Iowa game unprompted. She claimed Caitlin Clark fans bullied her online, sent her racist messages, called her slurs. She said it made her want to quit basketball entirely. Now, online harassment is real and it's serious, but here's what makes this claim so problematic. No evidence ever surfaced, no screenshots, no archived posts, no contemporaneous reports from 2023 when it allegedly happened, just a claim made 2 years later, right as she's entering the draft, about the fan base of the WNBA's biggest star. And the Fever front office, led by general manager Amber Cox and head coach Stephanie White, decided this was the culture fit they wanted in their locker room.
Johnson from the University of South Carolina.
I almost fell out of my chair. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, this is arguably the biggest sports drafting malpractice I've ever seen.
The reaction was instantaneous and brutal. Within minutes of the draft announcement, Fever fans flooded social media with responses ranging from confusion to outrage. These aren't casual observers. These are the people who bought tickets, drove attendance from bottom 5 to top 3 in one season, made Indiana the most watched team in WNBA history, and their message was unified. What are you doing? Because here's what the front office apparently didn't consider. Caitlin Clark is the reason the Indiana Fever matter right now. She's the reason ESPN moved their games to prime time. She's the reason the Fever sold out Gainbridge Fieldhouse 17 times last season after years of playing to half-empty arenas. She's the reason the franchise valuation tripled in 12 months. You don't build around a generational talent by drafting someone who publicly attacked her fan base 2 weeks before the draft. That's not protecting your locker room. That's importing drama directly into it.
Look, one could argue Caitlin Clark's in the top 3 biggest stars in all of basketball, NBA included. I think some could argue she's number 1 now that LeBron's a little older and getting ready to retire. But just 2 weeks after gaslighting, running her mouth about the Caitlin Clark fan base, calling her slurs, saying that she was bullied, the Indiana Fever decided to bring this player.
Let's talk about Stephanie White specifically, because her fingerprints are all over this decision. White spent the entire 2024-25 college basketball season as an analyst covering women's basketball. She called multiple South Carolina games. She praised Raven Johnson repeatedly on broadcasts, highlighting her defensive intensity and leadership. That's fine. Coaches are allowed to admire players before drafting them. But White also watched Johnson make those accusations in April. She heard Johnson claim Iowa fans racially harassed her. She knew the political landmine this represented, and she drafted her anyway. This suggests one of two things. Either White genuinely believes Johnson's claims and thinks Caitlin Clark's fan base is toxic and needs to be confronted, or White prioritized basketball talent over team chemistry and thought this would just blow over. Neither explanation is encouraging.
Yeah. What are we doing? What are we doing? Brain dead front office and Stephanie White. I just had to draft a race-baiting social justice warrior. Just sabotaging Caitlin Clark at this point. It's as clear as day. The W is just trying to keep Caitlin Clark from replacing Taurasi and Bird in the record books. There's Caitlin waving Raven Johnson off.
Now let's address the basketball side, because even if you ignore the political disaster, this pick doesn't make sense. Raven Johnson is a 5'9" defensive guard who averaged 8.1 points per game in her senior season at South Carolina. She's not a shooter. She's not a primary ball handler. She's a role player whose value comes from perimeter defense and energy. The Fever already have Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell in the backcourt. They already have Lexi Hull as a defensive wing. They desperately needed front court depth, backup big bodies who can rebound and protect the rim. Brianna Turner and Temi Fagbenley both left in free agency, creating a massive hole in the front court rotation. Instead, with the 10th pick in the draft, the Fever selected their fourth guard, a player who doesn't address their biggest roster weakness, a player who brings immediate controversy, a player whose college coach Don Staley runs an offensive system so different from Indiana's that the transition will be steep. From a pure roster construction standpoint, this is defensible only if you think Johnson is a future all-star. And nobody, not even her biggest supporters, is projecting that.
You picked a girl that made fake racism allegations against the Clark fans. This front office is dumb as F. You all need firing on the spot. I can't believe it. I can't believe this. Ain't no way. Oh, wow. 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 I knew Stephanie White would do this shit. She was glazing Raven all college season long. Effing joke, a small 5'9" guard? Not to...
Here's where this gets particularly uncomfortable. Caitlin Clark has never publicly responded to Johnson's accusations. She's never addressed the 2023 Iowa-South Carolina game controversy. She's never defended her fan base against the claim that they sent racist harassment. And now she doesn't have to just ignore it. She has to share a locker room with the person who made the accusation. Think about that dynamic. Every practice, every film session, every team meeting. Caitlin Clark, the face of the franchise, the player generating 90% of the team's revenue and attention, sitting across from someone who claimed her supporters are racist bullies. How does that conversation go? Does Johnson apologize? Does she stand by her claims? Does Clark just pretend it never happened? Does the coaching staff address it directly or hope everyone acts professional? This isn't a minor personality clash. This is a fundamental values conflict. that the front office voluntarily created.
How can you guys say you're serious about a championship and draft her? Picking someone who is still so butthurt over something Caitlyn did 3 years ago that she whines about it in interviews today is not exactly, quote, protecting the locker room. Wow. I am talk about a momentum killer. What this organization would screw up a wet dream.
And it's not just Fever fans who are furious. League observers, draft analysts, and basketball commentators are struggling to find the logic here. The consensus take is somewhere between baffled and appalled, because this isn't the first time the Fever have mismanaged the Caitlin Clark situation. Last season, they fired Christy Sides mid-year despite a playoff appearance, creating unnecessary turmoil. They've been slow to build a competent supporting cast, leaving Clark to carry an absurd offensive load. They failed to capitalize on merchandise opportunities, leaving money on the table while Clark's jersey outsells every other WNBA player combined. But this might be the most tone-deaf decision yet. This isn't just failing to maximize an asset. This is actively undermining your franchise cornerstone by creating an avoidable controversy that benefits nobody.
Here's am I going to do that? If I don't like something, I'm going to say it. This is dumb. This is malpractice at the highest level. You drafted drama into your locker room that is pointed directly in the direction of the biggest star in the sport. Christine Brennan was right. That book right there. That book. It says in that book, the WNBA and the Indiana Fever were not prepared for the biggest star in the sport to arrive. They obviously haven't learned a lot. They haven't learned a lot. Tell me what you think. Wow. Hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're still subscribed. Try not to drink too much tonight after this pick. Good God.
So what happens now? That's the question hanging over Indiana as the offseason continues. Because this isn't going away quietly. Raven Johnson supporters are already defending the pick, accusing critics of racism and claiming Johnson is being unfairly targeted. Fever fans are pushing back, arguing this has nothing to do with Johnson's race and everything to do with her public comments about their fan base. The battle lines are drawn, and it's happening in the replies of every Fever social media post. This is the environment the front office created. This is the division they invited, and it's going to follow this team all season long. Every time Johnson checks into a game, the crowd reaction will be analyzed. Every time she and Clark share the court, the body language will be scrutinized. Every interview either of them gives will be mined for subtext. The media will ask about it. Opposing fan bases will weaponize it. And the Fever will spend the entire season managing a distraction that didn't have to exist. Amber Cox and Stephanie White better hope Raven Johnson becomes a rotation player immediately, because if she's riding the bench while this circus continues, the pressure on this front office is going to be immense. Fever fans didn't just buy tickets to watch basketball. They invested emotionally in this team's success, and they're watching the people in charge make decisions that feel like sabotage. Here's the reality that Indiana's front office doesn't seem to grasp. Caitlin Clark is bigger than the WNBA right now. Her cultural impact transcends the league. She brings casual sports fans, she brings media attention, she brings corporate sponsorship dollars that didn't exist before. She's the reason the WNBA is negotiating a new television deal worth exponentially more than the previous one. And she's not locked into Indiana forever. She's got years before unrestricted free agency, but the league is expanding. New teams are coming. And if the Fever continue to demonstrate that they don't understand what they have, that they're more interested in political posturing or loyalty to certain coaching networks than building a championship contender around their generational talent, Clark will have options. That's what makes this draft pick so reckless. It signals to your franchise player that management either doesn't understand the situation or doesn't care. It signals that the front office is willing to prioritize other considerations over her comfort and success. And that's how you lose generational talents. Look at what happened in the NBA when teams mismanaged their stars. Kevin Durant left Oklahoma City partly because the front office failed to build adequately around him. LeBron James left Cleveland the first time because the Cavaliers wasted years of his prime with inadequate rosters. Anthony Davis forced his way out of New Orleans because the Pelicans couldn't put a contender together. The WNBA operates under different financial constraints, but the principle is the same. Stars have leverage, and Caitlin Clark's leverage is increasing every season as her cultural footprint grows. The Indiana Fever just told their franchise player that her feelings about locker room chemistry matter less than the front office's draft board. They told her fan base, the people who filled the arena and bought the merchandise and drove the ratings, that their concerns are irrelevant. They told the league that they're more interested in making a statement than making smart basketball decisions. And they did all of this for a 5'9" defensive guard who doesn't solve any of their roster problems. That's not just bad management, that's organizational arrogance. It's the kind of decision that looks indefensible now and will look even worse if it blows up during the season. Because when you're managing the biggest star in women's basketball, every decision gets magnified, every mistake gets amplified, and every unforced error becomes a referendum on your competence. Amber Cox has been the Fever's GM since 2023. She inherited a struggling franchise and lucked into the #1 pick that became Caitlin Clark. That pick wasn't the result of brilliant management. It was the result of being bad enough, long enough, to land the top selection in a generational draft. And now, instead of riding that good fortune into sustained success, Cox is making decisions that threaten to waste it. Stephanie White returned to Indiana with a reputation as a player development coach and a culture builder. She was supposed to bring stability after the Christie Sides disaster. She was supposed to understand the Indiana market, having played for the Fever during their championship years. She was supposed to get it. And her first major roster decision is drafting a player who accused her franchise Cornerstone's fanbase of racism 2 weeks before the draft. That's not culture building, that's culture destruction. And if White thinks she can manage this situation through sheer force of personality and coaching acumen, she's underestimating how deep this rift goes. Fever fans aren't just disappointed, they're furious, they feel betrayed, and they're not going to let this go just because the season starts. So here's the question everyone's asking. Was this worth it? Was Raven Johnson's defensive potential worth alienating your entire fan base? Was her South Carolina pedigree worth creating a locker room controversy that will dominate coverage all season? Was her draft position value worth potentially damaging your relationship with the biggest star in women's basketball? Because if the answer to any of those questions is yes, then the Indiana Fever front office is operating with a completely different set of priorities than their fans. And that disconnect, more than any individual roster decision, is what's going to define this franchise's trajectory. The WNBA is at a crossroads. The Caitlin Clark era has brought unprecedented attention, unprecedented revenue, and unprecedented expectations. Teams that figure out how to capitalize on this moment will thrive. Teams that fumble it will get left behind. Right now, the Indiana Fever are fumbling, and the clock is ticking.